Welcome back to Bionicle Story Hour. Today we get confusing and depressing. Okay, so let's recap. And by let's recap, I mean just go watch the first video because there's no way that I'm gonna re-explain everything that I explained there. Neither of us have that kind of time. But to briefly set the scene, when we last left our heroes, they had just defeated Makuta and headed down beneath his lair to reawaken Metru Nui, but instead of finding Metru Nui, they found an island city, at which point the Turaga revealed that they had been hiding a bunch of stuff and launched into a very long flashback, the content of which is what we will be discussing today. But before we jump into that, there is something I want to invite you to understand, which is that when I said in the first video that Greg Farshtey planned out all of Bionicle from the very first moment, that was like a joke. Like, I don't think that's actually true. I don't think there was really a plan at the beginning. I think they were just trying to sell toys. But at this point, starting in 2004, there is a plan. That 100,000 year timeline is in place. And as a result of that, Bionicle has undergone a galactic level world building level up. Like whatever your favorite world building thing is, you know, Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, Dark Souls, Brandon Sanderson, maybe? Look, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what your previous favorite world building thing is, because now your favorite world building thing is Bionicle, because Bionicle has the best world building. Basically what I'm saying right now is that 2001 to 2003 was baby mode Bionicle, and 2004 on is real Bionicle. So if at any time in the first video you were like, man, this is confusing and overwhelming, I don't know what's going on, oh, you fool, you buffoon, you do not know what those words mean. You do not understand the horrors that await you. Okay, with that said, let's get into it. Part 2, the Metru Nui. Okay, so first things first, the Matoran are not native to the island of Metru Nui. That whole story about the Great Spirit giving them the island, none of that was true. The Matoran are native to a place called Metru Nui, an island city in a cavern directly beneath Metru Nui. The island of Metru Nui is a refugee colony which the Matoran were forced to set up 1,000 years ago after their real home was rendered uninhabitable. And this era of Bionicle is about the circumstances and events leading to that. Now, Metru Nui is different from Metru Nui in many ways. I'm gonna tell you 3 of them. Number 1, all of Metru Nui, down to the very earth and water, is made of protodermis, which is the same stuff that Bionicles are made out of. So if you are wondering, why are all these cyborgs running around on a tropical island? Well, that's why. They're not from the tropical island, they're from the cyborg island. Number 2, Metru Nui is not isolated. Metru Nui was a singular rock floating in a nameless ocean. Metru Nui, on the other hand, is just one land in this massive underground archipelago, which wouldn't be named officially for a while, but for the sake of convenience, I'm going to tell you is called the Matoran universe, which is not to be confused with the Bionicle universe. The Bionicle universe is the setting of the intellectual property Bionicle. The Matoran universe is a place in that. Oh yeah, so just to be clear, the Great Spirit Metru Nui is not the creator of the Matoran or the Matoran universe. He's more like their guardian and custodian. The Matoran universe and everything in it, including the Matoran and including Metru Nui himself, were made by the Great Beings. They're kind of vaguely mentioned as the fundamental force of all creation, but it's just like a few offhand references. Don't worry about them, I'm just saying this for clarity. They aren't important. Yet. Number 3, Metru Nui itself is maybe the best example of that world-building level up I was talking about, because like Metru Nui, Metru Nui is broken up into 6 elementally themed regions with a different color Matoran living in each. But the regions of Metru Nui were pretty much the very first thing you think of when you think of an elementally themed region, whereas the districts of Metru Nui are not. So, like, Ga-Metru is not just the beach, it's the spiritual and academic center of the city. Ko-Metru isn't just icy mountaintops, it's organically grown crystal spires where Matorans study the stars to predict the future. Ta-Metru isn't just a volcano, it's the furnaces where Kanohi masks are forged. Le-Metru isn't just a jungle, it's the city's transit hub where they run the system of floating water slides that serve as the main form of public transportation. Ona-Metru is not just mine, finds, it's the Archives, a combination zoo, museum, anomaly containment facility, and endless warren of dark tunnels containing horrors undreamt of. Metru isn't just a bunch of dudes carving rocks in a desert. It's okay, no, Metru, it just is a bunch of dudes carving rocks in a desert. That one's still the same, but you get the point. Metru Nui is not just a setting for fights to happen. It is a well thought out, fully realized place. And until recently, and by recently I mean 1,000 years ago, because that's when we are, Metru Nui was pretty much the place to be. Like, it's peaceful, it's beautiful, it's protected by dozens of Toa, and it's all presided over by this venerable elder named Turaga Duma. The thing is, lately Metru Nui has been getting a little bit, dystopian. All those Toa that are supposed to be protecting the city, yeah, they've all been sent out one by one on missions to other lands, and none of them have come back. And with this deficit of Toa, Metru Nui's robot police force, the Vaki, have been stepping up to take their place, and the Vaki are a problem. Vaki are machines that cannot be understood or reasoned with, and were specifically programmed to have no emotions except for taking pleasure in hunting criminals, and that have weapons that do things like brainwash you to their cause so that you rat out your friends, or eliminate all your higher mental functions for a few hours, or hijack your senses for days without your knowledge so that they can spy on you and track down other dissidents. The Vaki are terrifying. Hashtag AVAB. I really wish that I still had my Vaki because they're really cool. They got these pincer mouths, they can flip around their heads and limbs to shift to a quadruped form, which really sells them as freaky machines. Unfortunately, I don't have them anymore, but what I do have is this thing, which is also super sick. This is a Vaki combiner set, and unlike in the Mata Nui era, combiner sets are now actually things in the lore instead of stupid fusions. This one's called a Krahu. It's like an alternate model of Vaki with different abilities. There's also another one of those called a Kranua, and there's also another one of those called a Kralhi that's actually a predecessor to the Vaki, but it got retired because it was too dangerous, but then they all went rogue and ended up living in a cave with this Matoran that also went rogue after the government cracked down on his illegal sea monster research. Do you see what I mean about the world building level up? Do you understand? So the Toa are disappearing, the Vaki are getting more aggressive, and then on top of that, there's this evil plant called the Morbuzak that started spreading its vines all around the outskirts of the city, forcing Matoran in toward the center, and the ones that don't move fast enough are just vanishing. We have no idea where they went. And then on top of that, Turaga Duma recently ruled that all the sea gates leading into and out of Metru Nui are to be indefinitely closed for no clear reason. So basically things are not going great in Metru Nui. By the way, this is also all in addition to just the inherent existential horror of being a Matoran. Because as a Matoran, you are an immortal who lives a life with no birth or death or love or really change to speak of. You spend all your time working one job with very little opportunity for career advancement because everyone's immortal, so why wouldn't you have already hired the best people for a job after thousands of years? There's not a lot in the way of recreational activity, and most of what does exist is illegal and will get the Vaki on your ass, which you do not want. You don't really get paid, and even if you did get paid, there's really nothing you would spend the money on in the way of luxury goods. There's no such thing as a wealthy Matoran. Also, food doesn't exist, by the way. So basically, you spend your entire life stuck in one place working one job to no reward without really any possibility of anything changing. But I think we're basically just meant to understand that Matoran have a different standard for what a good life is, and just having a job and doing it well is inherently fulfilling to them, and they don't experience existential despair over the nature of their immortality. But I just wanted to make it clear that by human standards, Matoran life is so bleak. So anyway, things are not looking good in Metru Nui, but there is one Toa left in the city, and his name is Toa Lhikan. And Toa Lhikan is the guy. Lhikan's a Toa of fire, and he's sort of like Tahu, but if instead of being a stupid dickhead, Tahu was the guy. You see, Lhikan's not just Metru Nui's last Toa, he's Metru Nui's best Toa, universally beloved and admired by the Matoran, and a veteran war hero with thousands of years of experience. If you ask somebody who their favorite Toa is and they don't say Lhikan, it's because they're physically unattractive and possess low moral fiber, and they are threatened by Toa Lhikan. Or it could also be because their favorite Toa is that other guy, and I mean, like, yeah, but he's not around yet, so it's Lhikan. Now, Toa Lhikan is not about to get lured out of the city and covertly taken out like these other fraud-ass Toa. He knows there's something going down in Metru Nui, and he's got a plan. He infuses some of his Toa power into 6 rocks and goes around the city handing them out to 6 Matoran, 1 from each district. And the names of these Matoran are Nokama, Matau, Nuju, Wenua, Onewa, and Vakama. That sound familiar? It probably doesn't, because I only mentioned their names once in passing and you probably forgot, but these are the Mata Nui era Turaga, or were them, or will be them. So Lhikan goes around handing out these stones, and the last Matoran he visits is Vakama, who is the fire Matoran of this group, the greatest mask maker in all of Metru Nui, and low-key, the main character of this era. So Lhikan shows up at Vakama's forge, and he's like, look, Vakama, something real shady is going down in Metru Nui. I'm gonna try and handle it, but you're my contingency plan. I need you to take this rock and save the heart of Metru Nui. And Vakama is like, dude, you know I make masks, right? But before Lhikan can explain any further, he's suddenly attacked by these 2 guys who have shown up to capture him. And these guys are called Nidhiki and Kreka. Nidhiki and Kreka work for an organization called the Dark Hunters, who are a group of shady mercenaries, and they're being paid to eliminate all the Toa in Metru Nui. That's the reason all the Toa are disappearing. These guys have taken them out. Okay, technically Nidhiki and Kreka actually didn't do that. They're only here for Lhikan and to do some other stuff in the city, and the rest of the Toa were taken out by this other Dark Hunter named Eliminator. Usually his job is like to get Dark Hunters who fit. Now, Nidhiki actually used to be a member of Lhikan's Toa team. This dude used to be a Toa of air. I realize he doesn't look like it, and he's pretty much just Loki. Like, he is the weaselly green brother of a legendary Giga Chad hero who tried to betray him for his own personal gain, but that didn't work out, and he ended up getting exiled and working for an evil overlord who went on to completely screw him over and then kill him. Except in Nidhiki's case, this whole process also involved a dominatrix turning him into a crab by shooting him with a Beyblade. More on that later. And then Kreka is a much less lore significant character. He's just this big dumb gorilla that the Dark Hunter management teams up with Nidhiki because they know that Nidhiki is a treacherous little bastard man who will betray them at the first chance he gets, and Kreka is canonically too stupid to be deceived, so he keeps him in line. So these 2 goons show up to capture Lhikan, and Lhikan obviously just puts the moves on them. They can't get him. He's Toa Lhikan. But then Nidhiki grabs Vakama and he's like, look, Lhikan, I'm gonna drop this Matoran in lava if you don't come with us. And Lhikan's like, oh my god, fine. So they capture him and take him away. And Vakama would go on to have a complex about this for literally the next 1,000 years. So he's sitting in his forge basically having a panic attack because, like, that was their last and best Toa. These 2 Dark Hunters just took him. They're on the loose. The Morbuzak is still a problem. Metru Nui is screwed. But then, suddenly, Turaga Duma shows up. He's like the president of Metru Nui. And Vakama's like, oh, Turaga Duma, thank God you're here. Lhikan just got taken away by these 2 Dark Hunters. The city's in real trouble. We gotta send for reinforcements. And Duma's like, oh, dang, man, that's crazy that happened. That's so nuts. I certainly don't know anything about that. That has nothing to do with me. I'm not involved. I'll take care of that, though. I'll get right on that. Don't worry. One thing I want to talk to you about, though. Where's the Mask of Time at? Yeah, that's right, it's back, and I know you were clamoring for the backstory of the Mask of Time, right? Oh, what's that, you weren't? No one was? That's too bad. Yeah, okay, so since Vakama is the greatest mask maker in Metru Nui, Turaga Duma has commissioned him to make the Mask of Time. I'm not really sure why Turaga Duma even thinks that's possible to do, but he really wants the Mask of Time. And Vakama's like, yeah, you know, I haven't really been able to do it yet, I've been trying, but you know. Meanwhile, our last Toa just got kidnapped by the Dark Hunters. I kind of feel like you're glossing over this. And Duma's like, yeah, no, for sure, I'll handle that, but, like, I need that mask. Like, I want that mask on my desk by 5. make me that fucking mad. So Duma leaves and Vakama is like, okay, I don't know what the hell that was, but I'm listening to Lhikan because Lhikan's the guy and I need to do what he said. So Vakama takes the rock that Lhikan gave him to the great temple in Metru, and he meets up with the other 5 Matoran there, and they all put their rocks into this, like, thing in the temple, and a projection of Lhikan comes out. And this projection of Lhikan is like, okay guys, listen, the city is in major trouble, and I'm not gonna be able to save it. That's the bad news. The good news is that these rocks that I gave you are Toa stones. They're about to transform all of you into Toa. Save the heart of Metru Nui. And through the power of the Toa stones, the 6 Matoran are transformed into the Toa Metru. What it takes to be a hero. So when it comes to the Toa Metru, who by the way are called the Toa Metru because they're the first Toa that are actually native to Metru Nui, there are really 2 things to discuss. There's the Toa Metru as characters, and there's the Toa Metru as toy designs. Let's start with the designs. It is my personal opinion, but I am correct, that the Toa Mata have only ever truly been surpassed as Toa designs one time, and it was not by these guys. Now, there are many things to like about the Toa Metru design, but there are many more things that I just want to complain about. I don't really like the Toa Metru. I don't like their masks. I don't like their weapons. I don't like their colors, which are darker and more desaturated to match the darker tone, but just don't look very good. I don't like that their shoulders are like 200 miles from the rest of their body, connected by these little itty-bitty tiny joints, so that if you look at them from more than like 5 feet away, they look like Rayman. I just find them generally awkward, and the most awkward is Lhikan, because first of all, his mask looks stupid, and then secondly, his weapons are so comically gigantic that he has to hold his arms at this bizarre angle, or they're just fully behind him. Like, they really did my goat dirty on this one. But then on the other hand, we have the Toa Metru as characters, and as characters, I love the Toa Metru because they're awful. Because, like, so the Toa Mata, right? They had their quirks, they argued a lot, they were generally pretty stupid, but at the end of the day, they were all fundamentally heroes. Whereas the Toa Metru are just 6 random dudes off the street who have been transformed into superheroes, and they act like it. There's one part where Onewa, the Toa Metru of Stone, sums them all up very accurately, where he says Vakama is too much of a dreamer, and also has some other issues that we'll get into later. Nokama seems a little stuck on herself, but also is still the heart of the team and everybody else's babysitter, because she's still the only girl, and we're still on that stereotype grind. Matao is just straight up obnoxious and constantly engaging in clown-ass behavior. Nuju and Wanua are different flavors of massive nerd who are constantly arguing over whose fandom is more cringe. Spoiler alert, it's both of them. And then Onewa's main character trait is just being very mean. Just to everyone all the time. Also, all of the Toa Metru are to some degree racist. I mean, like, not really, but Matoran of different colors have a certain amount of, like, enmity and rivalry, and they're constantly making fun of each other. Vakama gets called slurs, like all the time. So all of that is very fun. The Toa Metru are very fun. So the Toa Metru are standing around being like, whoa, this is crazy, we're Toa, this is awesome, when suddenly Vakama has a vision. Now, Vakama has many visions throughout this whole era, and I'm pretty sure that they're never actually explained. My personal theory is that Greg Farshtey realized that with their only mentor figure missing in action, the Toa Metru would just have no idea what to do. So he was like, oh, shit. Vakama has a vision that tells them what to do. So in this vision, Vakama again sees Toa Lhikan, who again tells him to save the heart of Metru Nui, and to do that, the Toa will need to collect the 6 great discs. Which brings us to our first new gimmick alert. Shit. Where'd my disc go? Kanoka discs. Kanoka discs are discs of protodermis used in Metru Nui for sports, weapons, and technology. There is a lot of lore surrounding Kanoka discs. They all have a power and a power level and a district they were made in that determines their flight properties, and like airships use them. Disc launchers are very prevalent in the sets of this era. Kreka and Nidhiki have them, Vaki all have them. Vakama's weapon is literally just a disc launcher. Unfortunately, Vakama's disc launcher sucks. Fortunately, I have this disembodied Vaki head for some reason, and it has a disc launcher that works much better. So we're gonna test it out. Observe. That was very bad. Yeah. But the most important thing about discs is that they are the raw material used for mask making. Masks are made from discs. So when I said in the first video that Bionicle's gimmicks are all one step down in terms of relevance, well, this is a very direct step down. Oh, also the Toa find 6 discs in the temple that have their names and masks on them, and they're like, oh, this proves that we were actually destined to be Toa. Lhikan didn't just pick 6 randos, so, like, that's nice for them. So Vakama has this vision, and he's like, whoa, you guys, I just had this vision, we gotta go get the 6 great discs, which are, like, the strongest discs. They've got the highest power level. We need to get these discs to save the city, and then we'll give them to Duma to prove our worth as Toa. And the other Toa just met Vakama, like, 2 minutes ago, and now he's ranting about this vision and this mission that he thinks they have, and they're like, okay, man, I mean, like, I guess that would prove our worth as Toa, so we will do that, but also, I'll just take any excuse not to be near you, cause you're insane. So the Toa Metru split off to go get the great discs, and this leads into the next roughly 3 arcs of this era, which I would put all of under the heading, the Toa do a bunch of stuff. So, if I were gonna level one criticism at Bionicle as a whole, it would be that way too much of the story is just the Toa doing stuff. You know, it's stuff like, okay, so the Toa are looking for the great discs, but only these 6 Matoran know where the discs are, so they have to save the Matoran from Nidhiki and Kreka, and then they have to team up with the Matoran to get the discs, but the discs are in dangerous places, guarded by dangerous things. What are the Toa gonna do? Guess we have to have an action scene. And this isn't to say that any of this is, like, badly put together. Farshtey's in charge of the books now, so everything is pretty competently written, and there's some good one-liners and banter. There's a part where the Toa are talking to one of the Matoran, and they're like, okay, we gotta find the great disc that you know the location of, and the Matoran is like, ugh, everybody wants my disc, which I did not read correctly on my first try, let me tell you that. And some of the stuff that the Toa are doing is genuinely really cool stuff. There's a part where the Toa are trying to find one of the discs while being pursued by Vaki, and they don't know where the disc is, but the Vaki model that's after them is known for, instead of chasing criminals, just going to where the criminals will be. So they just act like they know where the disc is, and then when the Vaki go to cut them off, they follow the Vaki to the disc, and like, that's actually really clever. That's a cool thing. Or like, there's a part where they go on a side quest down into the tunnels beneath the archives, and they encounter all these crazy Rahi, and there's Rakshi down there, and there's this shapeshifter called the Kraka that tries to turn them against each other, but then they convince it to stand down because its plan to rule the surface is doomed to fail. Or like, there's a part where Godzilla busts out of the ground and starts destroying shit. It's called the Tatarak, but it's just it is Godzilla, and they have to collapse the ground beneath its feet and drop it down into the archives, and like, this just happens. This just happens in like one issue of a comic, and then it basically has no bearing on anything. And that's kind of the problem with all of this, is that it's all very interesting stuff, but it doesn't really have any impact on the overarching story of Bionicle, and although it may appear otherwise, I'm trying to give you the concise and focused version of this story, so I'm basically just gonna skip all this, which, by the way, the movie just blows past all of this in 10 seconds. I've already devoted way more time to all of this than the movie did. So, to extremely summarize, the Toa get the discs, they find out where the king root of the Morbazak is, which is like its core, they go there, they use the power of the discs to destroy it, and they win. They saved the city. When you're lost! So fresh off the defeat of the Morbazak, the Toa roll up to the Coliseum, which is like Duma's palace in the center of the city, and also a Coliseum. And the Toa stroll in there, they're like, hey, yo, what up? We just defeated the Morbazak, check out these discs that we have. We're kind of the heroes of Metru Nui, give it up, hey. And Duma takes one look at them, especially Vakama, who, let's remember, is supposed to be making him the Mask of Time, and he's like, oh wow, look at you guys coming in hot, thinking you're big time because you got some discs. Toa must prove themselves with deeds, not gifts. Get the fuck out of here. And the Toa are like, wait, no, but we totally did do a deed. We defeated the Morbazak. Did we not say that? I feel like we said that. We did a deed. We did a deed. And Doom was like, I don't listen to this. Hey, if you guys are such big deed doers, how about you do the deed of getting off my dick? But you can't even survive the stupid obstacle course I have in this Coliseum. And first of all the Toa are like, okay, well, thank you, Vakama, because this whole thing was his idea. He was the one that was like, guys, we gotta get the discs. That'll prove our worth as Toa. I had a vision. And then they went to extreme lengths to get these discs and almost died several times. And they show up and Duma's like, I don't care about discs. Do I look like a Blu-ray player? And then secondly, the Toa are now in complete disarray. So when Duma turns on the obstacle course that's in the Coliseum floor, it really messes them up. They do a really bad job at it. And Duma's like, these fake-ass Toa, they can't even do an obstacle course talking about, oh, we defeated the Morbuzak, you guys. These are imposters. They are fraud. You know what? They're probably the ones that kidnapped Toa Lhikan. Vaki sees them, and literally as he's saying this, Nidhiki and Kreka walk out behind him, and Vakama is like, yo, no, it was not us, it was them. Those extremely evil guys. One of them is a spider. That guy actually, you know that guy. He betrayed the city to the Dark Hunters, like, 100 years ago. Why are you? We're Toa, we beat the plant! And Duma's like, Vakama, I don't remember asking you a goddamn thing. Oh, wait a minute. I asked you to make me the mask of time. You could have just done that instead of becoming a fake Toa, but now you're going to jail. And obviously the Toa aren't just gonna let this happen, so they try to escape, but it doesn't go well. Matau, Nokama, and Vakama get away, but Nuju, Wenua, and Onewa all get captured and put in prison. So the three Toa that aren't in jail are trying to regroup and figure out what to do. Vakama starts screwing around with the great discs and discovers that he can fuse them into one mega disc. And Nokama is like, Vakama, stop screwing around with the discs. You're not a mask maker anymore. You are a Toa. We got guys in jail. We gotta bust them out to help us out here. And Vakama is busy having emotions because he led his team on this ridiculous wild goose chase and got half of them captured, and also is still salty about that time he got Lhikan captured. And he decides that their number one priority is finding Lhikan, because he's like, Lhikan told us to save the heart of Metru Nui. He's the heart of Metru Nui. He wants us to save him. If we get him out, he'll know what to do. He'll be able to fix this whole situation. Meanwhile, the three Toa that are in jail discover that there's this mysterious Turaga down there with them, and he starts giving them wisdom and teaching them how to not be assholes and also how to use their mask powers. Oh yeah, that's another thing. During the first three arcs of this story, the Toa Metru totally exhausted all their elemental powers. So by the time of this arc, which is also the movie, they just don't have them anymore. They only have their mask powers, which they don't know how to use because they're brand new Toa. But the movie doesn't explain any of that because it just skips those arcs. So like, I'm watching the movie as a kid being like, why are they acting like they can't shoot a fireball right now when that would definitely solve their problems? So the three jail Toa discover their mask powers with the help of this Turaga and use them to bust out. And meanwhile, the three not jail Toa also discover their mask powers during fights with Nidhiki and Kreka and a bunch of other stuff that they're doing, except for Vakama, who still doesn't have his because he sucks, and you already know that he adds that to his list of things to angst over. And then the two groups of Toa meet up, and the jail Toa are like, how did you know we were down here? And the not jail Toa are like, we didn't know you were down here. We were looking for Toa Lhikan. At which point this mysterious Turaga steps up and reveals that he is Lhikan. He is now Turaga Lhikan, because if you give your Toa power to 6 people, you don't get to be a Toa anymore. And Lhikan is like, oh, amazing, you guys are all here. So did you save the heart of Metru Nui like I told you to? And Vakama's like, well, we are rescuing you currently, so yeah. And Lhikan's like, dude, Vakama, what? I am not the heart of Metru Nui. Like, first of all, I'm not even from here. Secondly, I told you that before I got kidnapped, so I don't know how you think that works. Thirdly, why would I say it like that? If I wanted you to save me, I'd just say, come save me. The heart of Metru Nui is the people of Metru Nui. It's the Matoran, and while you guys have been looking for me, a useless old man, they are in serious trouble. We gotta go help them. And Vakama's like, oh god, oh, Lhikan, no, I failed you again. Oh no. And Lhikan's like, okay, shut up. I don't care about the emotional breakdown you're having right now. We gotta go save the Matoran. They're at the Coliseum. Let's go. And on their way back up, they encounter all these hollow metal spheres, and most of them are empty, but one of them, they open it up, and Turaga Duma is in there, comatose, and they're like, okay, hang on. If Turaga Duma is here, who's up there leading Metru Nui, and how long has that been happening? Clearly something very sinister is going down. We gotta get up there right now. So when the Toa get to the Coliseum, Duma has already had the Vaki load all the Matoran into these spheres. And the Toa pull up, and fake Duma is like, hey, look who decided to show up. You guys are so late. My plan is already locked down. And then he's like, oh yeah, I guess you guys probably figured out by now that I'm not Turaga Duma. I guess I don't need this disguise anymore. Takes off his mask. And it's Makuta. Uh-oh, folks, Makuta's back at it again. Now, I'm not even gonna bother trying to explain to you why Makuta is here and how he set this whole thing up. All you really need to know is that up until this point, Makuta being evil was a secret. This was back when he was still the brother of the Great Spirit, and now he's finally come out as evil. So Lhikan steps up and he's like, Makuta, you snake-ass motherfucker. You were sworn to protect the Matoran. What the hell is this? And Makuta's like, yeah, I'm pretty sure I know what I was sworn to do, bro. And for your information, I'm gonna protect the Matoran. But as for what I'm doing, I'm really glad you asked me that, because I'm actually right in the middle of using my galaxy brain to pull off my biggest scheme yet. Okay, so check this out. You're gonna love this. I used the Morbzak, which I created, by the way, to force all the Matoran toward the center of the city so that I could use the Vaki to round them up and put them in these spheres, which will render them comatose, and while they're comatose, they'll lose all their memories, and once that happens, I'm gonna reawaken them and act like I saved them, and then they're all gonna worship me as the Great Spirit forever. And I know what you're gonna say. You're gonna say, oh, but Makuta, what about the actual Great Spirit? What about Mata Nui? Isn't that gonna be a problem? Well, guess what, bitch? I got a plan for that too. And the plan for that is that he's also gonna put Mata Nui to sleep. This is that thing where Makuta cast Mata Nui into eternal slumber. This is that. So Makuta puts Mata Nui to sleep, puts the Matoran to sleep, and triggers the Great Cataclysm, a universe-wide earthquake that basically destroys Metru Nui, destroys a ton of other stuff, and signals the beginning of Makuta's evil reign. So, if you'll permit me a quick digression here, I think now would be a good time to take a step back and point out the fact that the entire Metru Nui era is uncannily similar to the Star Wars prequels. Go ahead and stop me if any of this sounds familiar, okay? Bionicle's Metru Nui era is a follow-up to the Mata Nui era, a very successful and iconic, but ultimately quite simple story that takes the aesthetics of sci-fi, but has more the vibe of legendary fantasy about a group of heroes rising up to overthrow an evil regime. Now, the Metru Nui era is a prequel to that follows the mentor characters from the original in their young lives as heroes themselves. It also massively expands the depth and breadth of the world building, doubles down on the sci-fi while pulling back on the fantasy, and generally takes a darker tone by focusing not on the fall of the evil regime, but its rise. But this is all pretty vague stuff, and I think the comparison only really starts to hit when we start talking about Makuta. I didn't really characterize him as such in my first video because I was trying to be funny, but Makuta in the Mata Nui era was a sort of devil figure. He was this ancient sorcerer of dark magic whose motives and origins were largely a mystery to us. He worked almost entirely through surrogates. We heard about him and saw his influence long before we actually saw him, and he only deigned to actually fight the heroes himself at the very end of the story. And then there's Makuta in the prequels. Makuta in the prequels is an evil entity who masquerades as the kindly old leader of the city that is the seat of power in the universe. He uses this position of power to work with other evil forces, some of which he created himself, to engineer a conflict with the dual purpose of making the population more susceptible to his influence, while also spreading thin and killing many of the appointed guardians of the universe, while also justifying the creation of a mass-produced army that is supposed to protect the people, but ultimately is only loyal to him. All of which culminates in a single massive event in which he frames the remaining guardians for treason, purges his former allies, and uses his army to grab power and take control of the entire population. And although the plan doesn't go off without a hitch due to the few remaining guardians winning a fight that he really thought that they would lose, it does exactly what it needed to do, marking a universe-wide paradigm shift from the golden age defined by the presence of those guardians to the dark times defined by their absence, and setting the stage for all the evil stuff he would be doing in the originals. So, like, I don't know what to tell you, man. Makuta just is Palpatine. Like, Star Wars. Get some original ideas. Stop ripping off Bionicle. Okay, if we're being serious, I'm really just kidding around here. Like, yeah, they're similar, yes, but it's not like it's a one-to-one thing. I mean, like, Palpatine's ultimate goal was to take over the whole galaxy using a giant planet-destroying superweapon. I mean, it's not like Makuta is gonna do that. Anyway, so the Toa are like, okay, well, we did a really bad job at saving the city. Metru Nui is completely screwed. Let's grab as many of these Matoran as we can, which is only like 6, but we'll come back for the rest later, and get the hell out of here. Meanwhile, Makuta turns into an evil tornado and absorbs Nidhiki, Kreka, and this bird that he's had around that I haven't told you about, and transforms into this thing, which, by the way, in the movie, looks like this. This looks like this. Maybe the biggest downgrade of all time. So the Toa Metru are sailing away toward the edge of Metru Nui's cavern, and Makuta flies over on his new wings, and he lands there, and he's like, no. You're going nowhere. I got you for 3 minutes. And he starts raising pillars out of the ocean to attack them. It's like a whole action scene. Sidebar. Throughout all of this, Vakama has been working on the Mask of Time, and he's finally finished it. He couldn't do it before because he didn't have good enough discs, but with the great discs, he could fuse them all into the Disc of Time and then carve that into the Mask of Time, so now he has the Mask of Time, okay? And he's like, you guys, we're not gonna be able to escape from Makuta. I've got to go up there and fight him one-on-one. I've got the Mask of Time. I got this. So Vakama pulls up with the Mask of Time, and Makuta's like, ooh, Mask of Time? Damn. You know what, man? I knew you could do it. You were always a way better mask maker than you ever were a Toa. You know what? Give me that and join me, and we can rule the galaxy as father and son. How about that? And Vakama's like, yeah, that's not gonna happen. And Makuta's like, yeah, that wasn't really like a question. Give me the Mask of Time or I'll kill you for it. So Makuta shoots out a shadow hand to grab him, and Vakama tries to use the Mask of Time to stop him. And obviously that doesn't work because, like, it's the Mask of Time. It can't work. But here's the thing. In the Mata Nui era, when Tahu tried to use the Mask of Time, the reason that it didn't work is because the Bo-Rakal had a counter for it. They were like, yeah, we are stopped in time, but we've got a force field so you can't get to us. But we are stopped in time. But when Vakama tries to use the Mask of Time, straight up it just doesn't work. Like, Makuta has no counter for it. He has no way around it. It just doesn't work. He just isn't stopped. Which for me raises the question of why, when Vakama was giving Tahu the Mask of Time, was he acting like it was this super dangerous thing? Because this is the only time that Vakama ever actually uses the Mask of Time, and it doesn't do anything. Like, Makuta is actually about to kill Vakama, and the only reason that he doesn't is Lhikan jumps in from, like, outside reality. I have no idea where he came from. I don't even know how he got to where they were fighting. He jumps in and takes the hit for Vakama. And the Mask of Time gets knocked off Vakama's face and goes flying, and Makuta goes after it, and Vakama is cradling Lhikan as he's dying, and he's like, oh my god, I failed you again. How does this keep happening? And even after all of this, on his deathbed, Lhikan is still like, no, I am proud to have called you brother. You are a true Toa. Like, god damn, bro. We did not deserve Toa Lhikan. Even in death, this man is so goated. And this last inspiration from Lhikan finally gives Vakama the confidence to unlock his mask power, which is invisibility, which is an incredibly lame power for the climax of this era to hinge on, but they had already established that that was what Turaga Vakama's mask does, and they can't change it now. So Vakama turns invisible and sneaks up on Makuta, who has just picked up the Mask of Time, and he's like, ah, yes, at last, the Mask of Time, because it turns out that what he wanted the Mask of Time for was to use it to accelerate time, so that the whole Matoran losing their memories and then reawakening them with him as their god thing would happen in like a few days instead of knowing Bionicle probably like 50,000 years. But Vakama shoots a disc because you gotta keep that gimmick relevant. The gimmick has to be in the final battle, and knocks the mask out of Makuta's hand and into the sea. And Makuta is pissed off and hits him with one of the hardest lines in all Bionicle. He's like, without the Mask of Time, it will take a lifetime to realize both our destinies. Only yours will be brief. And he starts shooting off more shadow hands, and Vakama turns invisible and dodges them. By the way, we learned not long after this fight that Makuta actually has the powers of every type of Rakshi, of which there are like 50? And yet, despite having all these options, Makuta's only strategy in this fight is to shoot out a shadow hand to grab Vakama, and then if it doesn't hit Vakama, still do grab whatever it does hit and pull it directly into his own face. And it's mostly smaller rocks, so Makuta just smashes them, but then Vakama stands in front of a really big rock and taunts him and then dodges, and Makuta just grabs this rock and takes himself out. And you know, they act like, oh man, Vakama outsmarted this more powerful opponent. He tricked him. He won the mind game. That's not what happened. Makuta just fumbled the bag, like really bad, like damn. And Makuta's all smashed up and he's like, dude, Vakama, Toa Lhikan couldn't even beat me. You think you can do it alone? You're out of your mind. And all the other Toa roll up and they're like, but he's not alone. Power of unity. I don't know. And they combine their powers, because remember, that's the only way you can ever defeat a major villain in Bionicle, and trap Makuta in a giant crystal Toa seal. So Makuta is defeated, and the Toa Metru have finally, truly proven themselves as Toa. The thing is, the Great Cataclysm still, happened. That's not stricken from the record just because they beat Makuta. All the Matoran are in comas, and Metru Nui is wrecked. So the Toa are like, okay, we need to find the Matoran a new home, so let's go and do that, and then we'll come back and we'll rescue them. So the Toa go on this voyage through some sea caves, a bunch of stuff happens, none of it really matters, and eventually they arrive on the surface at the island of Mata Nui. So the Toa get to Mata Nui and they're like, what the hell is going on here? Why isn't everything made out of protodermis? Why is the water blue? Why are there trees? What is a tree? So the Toa Metru start looking around and exploring and figuring out where they're gonna build the villages. There's a lot of that annoying meta humor that shows up a lot in prequels during this time, or really that shows up a lot in anything that's set in the past, where the joke is it's the past and the characters don't know about what happens in the future, but you do. Like one of the Toa is like, well, Matau, if Lame Matoran can't get around in shoots, I guess they're just gonna have to start swinging from vines. And then Matau is like, yeah, right, that'll be the day. The Toa go down into one of Makuta's lairs, because Makuta would just be setting up lairs anywhere, I guess. And there's an evil plant down there called the Karzani that's like a predecessor to that other evil plant, the Morbuzak, that Makuta made, but it was too willful and arrogant and had its own ideas, so he locked it in a cave to die. And one of the Toa gets poisoned down in the lair, and it's like, hey, Toa, I don't know why I'm doing this voice for the Karzani. You know what? I like it, though. That's how he talks now. I'll get you the cure for that poison if you go and get me some energized protodermis. Remember energized protodermis? You probably still don't. So the Toa have to go and get energized protodermis from an entity made of energized protodermis called the energized protodermis entity. And they bring it back and the Karzani is like, ah yes, with this I can become even stronger, and the expiration date that Makuta put on my life will no longer be a problem for me. And it pours it on itself and it just disintegrates and dies, because 50% of the time that's what energized protodermis does, and it still has the gall to be like, cruel twist of fate, Makuta's final deception against me. And it's like, no dude, you bet your life on a coin toss and you lost. That's really on you, man. Anyway, Karzani dies and the Toa go back to what they were doing. They're getting ready to return to Metru Nui. But during all of this, three overarching things start happening. First of all, the Toa start noticing that a bunch of Rahi are coming up to Mata Nui from Metru Nui, seemingly having been driven out by something. And they also speculate that since most of the Rahi on Metru Nui were not native to the city, they were probably also driven there by the same something. Secondly, Vakama starts doing a lot of that thing. You know that thing that characters start to do sometimes, especially leaders that have failed, where they start being really snippy and domineering with their friends and having Anakin tendencies and saying shit like, I don't need any help, I can handle this myself. We don't have time to think about the lives of our friends, we gotta prioritize the mission. Well, I'm the leader and I say that's what we're doing, unless you want to fight me about it. Yeah, Vakama starts doing a lot of that thing, and I understand why, because his mentor did sacrifice himself to save him twice, and his home got destroyed, and he has to find a new home, and the new home kind of sucks, and all the Matoran are in comas, and they basically didn't rescue any of them, and the Great Spirit is asleep, and the entire universe got wrecked, and it's basically entirely his fault. So it makes sense why he's not doing great emotionally, but nonetheless, a lot of that thing. And then thirdly, in modern times, because remember, this has all been a flashback to 1,000 years ago, the Chiraga start acting really weird and cryptic, like there's some dark secret coming up that they're hesitant to reveal. Nuju goes to Vakama and he's like, look man, the next part of the story that we're about to tell, it's very cringe. We were acting very cringe at the time. Maybe we just don't tell the Toa Nuva this part and act like it just didn't happen. You know what I mean? And Vakama's like, no, even though it's true that we were acting very cringe at the time, we still have to tell them the truth because we said we would and it's the right thing to do. So basically there's a lot of ominous stuff going on and a lot of build up towards something very bad about to happen as we go into the next arc, The Great Rescue. And I was planning on talking about The Great Rescue right now, but then this video ended up being like a lot longer than I thought it was going to be, and it would be like twice as long if I talk about The Great Rescue, so I'm not gonna do that. Change of plans, we're splitting this era in two. So this has been part 2, part 1, and next time will be part 2, part 2. So if you want to hear about the conclusion to the Toa Metru's story, and this, then go ahead and subscribe and come back when I drop the second half of the Metru Nui era, where we will be discussing The Great Rescue. See you next time!